After a busy week, you leave work, it's raining, and the traffic is jammed, but you're not worried because you have plans with friends for the weekend. Your phone rings. It's your spouse reminding you to grab bread from the store if you happen to pass by on your way home. After hanging up, you take a moment to reflect. You're 40 now, with a job and a family. Wow, if someone had told me in the past that these days would come, you think to yourself, smiling at the uncertainty of what life might bring in the future. Suddenly, you notice a truck on the opposite lane has broken through the barrier and is speeding towards you, but it's too late. The last thing you see is the glare of the headlights, and sadly, your journey comes to an end. Or does it? Is the journey just beginning? You know what's the strongest instinct among all living things? Is it about making babies, finding grub, or keeping the species going? Well, those instincts are big deals, but for pretty much every critter out there, the number one instinct is just staying alive. Life's so darn rare and precious that every living body's wired to keep it going, no matter what. Humans are no exception to this rule. From way back in the day to now, we humans have probably done more adapting than any other bunch. And I'm not just talking about physical stuff. I mean, we've figured out how to fit in wherever we find ourselves. We've gone from crashing in trees to hiding out in caves, then to building our own cozy homes all over the planet, and finally, we've gone and fortified those homes with walls and laws. All of that's basically just to keep ourselves safe and kicking. This whole survival thing has made a real mark on us humans, more than on any other creatures, I'd say. Afterlife concept has been a subject of fascination for humanity throughout history. In 2007, archaeologists in San Giorgio, Italy, stumbled upon a remarkable discovery, a 6,000-year-old grave. Upon careful excavation, they were astonished to find a touching scene, the skeletons of a man and a woman, facing each other and holding hands. These young lovers were in their early 20s when they passed away. It's evident that those who buried them must have wished for their happiness to continue in the afterlife. Known as the Valle d'Este lovers, this grave is just one example among thousands worldwide, revealing humanity's ancient beliefs in life after death. For millennia, humanity has practiced various rituals to bid farewell to their departed loved ones. Hindu society cremates their deceased and bids them farewell by scattering their ashes into the sacred Ganges River, believing that the life-giving goddess Ganga will carry them to the next life. Buddhists view the body as a mere vessel that returns to nature once the soul embarks on its journey, especially in mountainous regions like Tibet. The body is ritually dismembered and left for animals to consume, integrating with nature. Ancient Egyptians carefully removed organs from the deceased's body, embalming it through a special process to create mummies. They placed the organs in jars and buried them alongside the deceased's tomb, along with belongings necessary for the afterlife. Wealthy individuals were buried with money. Similarly, many ancient cultures buried their dead with such rituals. Indeed, even today, both followers of Abrahamic religions and many philosophical belief systems carry out the act of burying their dead with a simple ceremony. This serves as a final tribute to the deceased and symbolizes their body's return to nature as their spirit, according to their beliefs, moves on to another realm. Now, many of you might be wondering, but where to? The first disciplines to answer this question in history were religions, and their response to this question was actually quite straightforward and definitive: you will be judged. Those who say, what could be worse than death, should lean back and brace themselves, because your troubles might just be starting, especially if you are a bad person. Throughout human history, although cultures have shown many differences, it's interesting to see how similarly they describe the initial stages of the afterlife. The reality is that you will be judged based on the good or bad actions you took in life. So, what's the origin of all this? Let's delve into it. As usual, according to the history presented to us, let's start with the Sumerians, the cradle of civilization. Those of you who have watched previous videos might be excited. Their life is filled with fantastical elements, creation of man, aliens, and so on. But if you're wondering about their deaths, you might actually be disappointed. Remember, in Sumerian belief, humans were created as slaves tasked with serving the gods.
This concept of belittlement also influenced the Sumerians' thoughts on death and the afterlife. According to them, When people die, they end up in Kur, a dark, desolate, and uncomfortable realm. Here, they are doomed to live forever in darkness, eating dust and suffering from thirst with no escape or return. Not quite the glamorous end, right? Reading this made me sad because usually, people living under tough conditions believe they will be happy in the afterlife. It's like their way of coping with hardships. However, the Sumerians didn't share this belief. They believed in a very harsh and dark eternity. It's not clear how this harsh way of thinking became embedded in their culture. Some researchers think that the Sumerians adopted this belief in the afterlife due to the harsh conditions of Mesopotamia, while others claim that the Anunnaki created humans just as servants, leading the Sumerians to accept this bleak view of life after death due to their oppressed psychology. Or maybe it was a simplistic deduction like a child's. The body goes into the ground, stays there. The only thing to eat when hungry is dirt. There's no water, and you can't escape the darkness. So that must be what death is like. Over time, this approach became fixed. But whatever the reason, I find it a terribly sad belief. Even the goddess Inanna once entered this realm and got trapped there. Similarly, in Abrahamic religions, after death, people are judged in the presence of God or Allah, depending on the outcome. They are either sent to suffer in hell or to find peace in heaven, which, according to some additions made by Arabs to the Quran, is embellished with perpetual delights like wine and houris. According to these beliefs, once you're there forever, and your journey of existence comes to an end. If we only get one shot at existence, how is it fair that someone who dies at 20 is judged the same way as someone who dies at 80? That's a valid question. When we look at Eastern philosophies, we encounter beliefs in cycles of creation like samsara, where your soul is believed to have incarnated through various levels of existence since its departure from the source, aiming to eventually return to it, achieving nirvana. In pagan traditions, death is also seen as part of natural cycles. After death, a person can transition to an existence where they can communicate with spirits as part of nature, or they may transition to a different realm. In paganism, concepts like heaven, hell, judgment, or punishment don't exist. They believe in the continuous movement and journey of the soul. I guess with these examples, you may have grasped the basic approaches to life after death worldwide. So, where do we get all this knowledge from? Let me respond with this question. How do you know there haven't been any who went and came back? In 2002, Anita Mooney went to the hospital for a checkup due to her illness, and she was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, a type of lymph cancer. After 4 years of battling, Anita's condition unfortunately worsened, and she was admitted to the hospital again. Doctors informed her that the cancer had spread throughout her body and her organs were beginning to fail, giving her only a few hours to live. Yes, we are all heading towards the day we will die since the day we were born. But it must be incredibly difficult to accept when someone tells you that you only have a few hours left. Indeed, Anita began to lose consciousness and her body shut down. But even though her body had shut down, something new had begun for Anita.
I remember drifting above my body. I remember all the doctors bustling around me, the nurses running, my loved ones crying. I remember reliving my entire life, my pains, my memories, every moment, as if in fast forward, and talking again with loved ones I had lost. The only thing I felt at that moment was unconditional love.
Anita woke up suddenly from this peaceful moment and opened her eyes on the stretcher where she lay unconscious. No one could make sense of what had happened, but what followed was even more extraordinary than before. Within a few weeks, the cancer completely retreated and disappeared from the body of the woman whose organs were said to be failing. It is one of the most astonishing near-death experiences and healing events in the medical world. She later wrote a book recounting her experience. Science, though it tackles the concept of consciousness in various ways, has a common thread even in the most general notions, the necessity of the brain or nervous system being active. But as you've seen in the examples you provided, some individuals continue to display a form of existence and even perceive what's happening around them, despite their system being completely shut down. This is the critical aha moment in the movie. Advanced brain studies today show us that our brains are incredibly filled with life at the moment of death. In May 2023, an experiment on the human brain and consciousness was conducted under the leadership of Dr. Jimo Borjigin. In the experiment, patients who had suffered serious brain damage due to accidents were closely examined from the moment life support was removed until the moment of death. The scans you see were taken just a few hours before the patients died. If you notice, the brain waves were compressed in a low range, and brain activity was significantly reduced. Only essential automatic motor functions for activities like basic breathing and circulation control were ongoing. What makes things interesting is that once life support was removed, a transition towards death began. You're seeing the graphs that were generated the moment life support was disconnected. You can see that there are 500 seconds left until the patient's death, and strange spikes are starting to appear in the brain activity. Now, some of you might say these are the final stages of the brain beginning to lack oxygen. Just wait a bit longer. We'll get to that part too. The graphs formed 300 seconds before death look like this. The brain seems to be operating at the highest capacity it has ever been since birth, across all frequencies, as if there's a burst of activity. Those who ask, what kind of activity can a dying body possibly be engaging in, might find the answer even more surprising. I said earlier to those claiming these events occurred due to a lack of oxygen to wait because it became clear that this burst isn't just the final throes of life. This incredible activity was particularly pronounced in specific areas of the brain, manifesting itself with full force: the somatosensory area and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. The somatosensory area is the part of your brain that interprets your senses. So, when you touch something, move, feel heat, cold, or pressure, this area analyzes it and helps you know your position while moving. But if the patient is medically dead and lying in bed, why is this area working so hard to interpret any movement or sensation? The dorsolateral cortex, on the other hand, is the brain's problem-solving and communication center. Communication here isn't just about speaking. This area is also heavily involved when groups work and discuss specific ideas. What's interesting is that during this period of high activity, it has been observed that all this data is also transferred to the brain's posterior cortex, the part responsible for conscious perception. Do you know when else this kind of activity is observed? When you have a deep dream. So, with this inference, we discovered that those brain-damaged individuals, just minutes before death, somehow found themselves moving, sensing things, communicating in some way, and analyzing all of this consciously. While this discovery gave us some answers, it also led to a much bigger question. Where were all these people going and who were they talking to just before death? So, is there an answer to this big question? Actually, the answer had been a resounding no for years. However, with a development that I love to mention in my videos, we can now provide some answers, or at least interpretations scientifically. Quantum physics. Newton's laws show us a fundamental law. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change forms. So, if consciousness, which we refer to, but don't fully understand, is a form of energy, considering that our brain is an organ processing electrical signals, this is highly possible. According to the laws of physics, even if your body dies, the disappearance of consciousness is impossible. However, there's a problem here. For years, researchers and philosophers have believed that consciousness is directly related to the brain. Even today, individuals in the atheistic belief system, claiming that the only thing awaiting us after death is darkness, a state of non-being, essentially don't believe in an afterlife for this reason. They see death as the end, believing that consciousness dies when our brain dies and you cease to exist. However, this belief is not correct according to quantum physics. Quantum physics tells us that the most fundamental structure of matter is energy waves, known as quanta, and these waves, with a certain vibration, form matter as we know it, essentially constituting the universe, physics, and existence. Remember the double-slit experiment. When a conscious observer looked at a wave, it materialized. According to this perspective, strings where everything converges, beyond space-time, form the matter we know. The universe, as a result of consciousness, formed, and eventually, you came into being. Your brain didn't create consciousness. What creates you and everything else is already consciousness, and your consciousness is a part of a much larger consciousness, regardless of whether you have a body or not. So, to add my own interpretation, you're not a consciousness or soul attached to a body. You're a consciousness or soul temporarily attached to a body, and one day, you'll return to where you began. As much as I love science and philosophy, after experiencing dozens of strange events firsthand, I am someone who believes that there is more to this world and creation than meets the eye. Can I use science to explain these? I hope to one day. I really want to, but even if science never reaches that level, it's okay. After all, this is a belief, a matter of choice, and I choose to believe in something beyond what's visible in this creation. I hope to use my choice to lean towards a point where we all meet someday. Whether people find this absurd or support it, I always say it's your journey, and no one can say anything about that. I hope we all live a good, beautiful, and healthy life, and whatever awaits us next, we go there in the best possible way and reunite with everyone we've lost and missed, becoming a part of the whole again. Thank you all for watching the video. Take care until we meet again next week.